So let's take a look at the coaching levels then. Hopefully you've come up with some similar sort of themes and ideas. We can see there are sort of 5 levels here. Well, let's start at the bottom one there. They'll be able to assist more qualified coaches, delivering aspects of coaching sessions, normally under direct supervision. They may be involved in some kind of mentoring scheme as well there, okay? Maybe coming along observing sessions and just helping out, possibly getting involved with the actual management of the session in some way, perhaps laying out the cones and so on, developing that area of coaching, and certainly being involved with more qualified coaches. They wouldn't really be off their own at this point. If we look at level 2, there's more preparation there in terms of the ability to deliver and review coaching sessions. If you've completed a level 2 coaching qualification, for example, you will have seen that there's quite a lot of paperwork involved as well, which does looking at reflective practices and so on, and reviewing sessions. So there's a definite step back from level 1 there. We look at a level 3 coach, okay, I'd say there's quite a large step up there from a level 2 in my personal experience. They'd be looking more at planning, implementing, running the sessions, being able to analyse and revise annual coaching programs. There we're looking at annual programs, okay, across the year, as opposed to the level 2 coach. We'll be looking at delivering and reviewing coaching sessions as discrete sections there. Moving on to the more sort of higher up the ladder then, to the more elite levels, we're looking at the level 4 coach. Well, designing, implementing again, and evaluating the process and outcomes of longer term specialist training programs, okay, and coaching programs. We look at level 5, which is the actual top of the scale there. They'll be generating, directing and managing the implementation of cutting-edge coaching solutions and programs. And really the level 5 would be sort of your pro licensed coach then, if we look at football, for example. I'd like us to do another little task then, please, if that's okay. What I'd like you to do is to identify the likely roles and responsibilities of a sport-specific development officer in the performance stage. Quite happy for you to think about a football development officer if that's what you'd like to do. Usual setup, off you go into your groups or work on your own if you need to. 10 to 15 minutes, come up with some ideas, and then we can share those ideas together. One of the key areas, or one of the key areas of focus then, in terms of attention for the sports development officer or the football development officer, will be around the clubs. This is the second component of the 3 C's that we mentioned previously. Club structure is really vital in terms of performance sport. Depending on the sport in question, club structure can be a little more important than others, but it's certainly very important. Think in terms of football. Where would the performance element take place? Voluntary clubs are vital for supporting the performance stage. Have a think and identify what you think that an SDO should concentrate on with regards to clubs when working in the performance stage. So let's look at your little mini task there, and we look at what an SDO would do, a sports development officer would do, in terms of supporting clubs in the performance phase. Just some ideas from me. Again, you may have different ones, and that's fine. They should create strong links with local providers of sport. Are we providing pathways, for example, from the participation phase right the way through into performance and possibly on even to the elite phase? That's something that we need to consider. They'd also need to assess the number and the quality of the clubs in place. They need to be familiar with what's going on, ensure there's clear communication channels between themselves and the clubs, assess the needs of the clubs, maybe establish some network support groups. For example, is there need for some business advice or other forms of advice? These are the type of things they'd be looking to do. They'd be involved in creating network support groups. A development officer should signpost clubs to where they can get support. In many cases, voluntary clubs don't always have the relevant expertise that they may need, so the SDO or the football development officer, depending on which sport we're involved in, could potentially help provide expertise to help clubs develop in those areas. They will also identify weak spots in the coaching structure. They may signpost to the development of new coaches if needed. Does the club have enough coaches? That's another question they would consider. They may also help set up coach education processes in conjunction with the national governing bodies. They would also be involved in the provision of coaching courses with clear progression for instructors. The provision there of necessary coach education with governing bodies, for example, such as the FA. Also, they be involved with advising clubs in terms of funding opportunities and national governing body competitions. Potentially looking at how clubs can access this funding via grant processes, and also the structure and opportunities presented by competitions such as leagues and so on. Sports development officers or football development officers are there as a support and facilitating mechanism for clubs to help performers reach the highest levels if that's their ambition. At the performance level, there's usually an ambition to proceed on to the elite level. So when we consider the factors we've just looked at there, we can see that the sports development officer's role is not necessarily about delivery per se. They are about infrastructure, networking, communication, and forming and maintaining positive relationships. They're a support mechanism to enhance the clubs they are attempting to provide best opportunity to, and also for the performers who wish to reach the highest level, which, as we previously discussed, is usually the ambition at the performance level. It is important to note that there are still some issues around club development. One of the key issues linked to the participation question is the number of people who are currently club members. There's two things we could consider here. Statistics and evidence suggest that we don't have particularly high figures in terms of club membership in the UK. However, we also need to consider that although we can push to encourage membership, we need to consider whether we have the capacity in place to actually facilitate this increase. If we consider adults in particular, we'll also see that there's a gender difference. Generally, the majority of clubs in certain sports are dominated by males. The positive news is that many national governing bodies are striving to increase female participation and are establishing programmes that hope to expand female participation. Not just at the participation phase, but also at the higher stages such as the performance level we are currently discussing. Well, how could they do that? What type of things would they do? Some examples could be female-specific change-in facilities, for example. And when we consider club systems and how they have developed historically, we can see that, well, clubs didn't always cater for, may still not cater for female members particularly well. As sport development officers, we would need to identify, evaluate and address these areas. So we would be able to address any barriers that could be in place in terms of female participation. The evidence does show high levels for things like gym membership and Keep Fit. Sport-specific memberships, on the slides we can see that in males, highest levels of membership are for things like golf, football and rugby, which are traditionally associated as being male-dominated sports. Female membership, on the other hand, is highest in badminton, squash and swimming. As I said previously, sports development professionals are working hard to encourage more females to take part in areas that are traditionally perceived as being male orientated, and there has been great success in sports such as football and rugby. However, I think it's also interesting to note that netball is placed very low on the slide, and hockey doesn't even feature. Traditionally, these sports have been regarded as the main participation team sports for females in the school system. So why don't we get females who play these sports in school moving through to the club setting? This is something to consider. Let's think about how much talent are we potentially losing. We also need to look at the declining level of participation in relation to club membership. It's interesting to consider club membership and participation in relation to people's ages. There is a significant drop in participation as we age. However, club membership figures still remain relatively high. Some of you may have noticed that when people become attached to a club, in some cases, once their playing days are over, those people keep a level of attachment to that club. This might be as a spectator, or even purely in social terms. For example, at my local football club, there is a real sense of community with a number of ex-players who like to come along to the bar in the evening and catch up with old friends. The social side of club membership is very, very important to them. The role of the club in the community is therefore something that we need to consider carefully. It can be very important.